Good day to everyone. My name is Filippo. I'm 26 years old and I grew up in a small town near Venice in the north coast of Italy. So, I was born and raised as an Italian Catholic. I grew up in an environment where everyone had to achieve and do well. Then people would look and say, "Isn't he so great? He has so many achievements." The standards were very high and imperfections were not tolerated. I was afraid that if I wasn't perfect, that somehow I was to blame and I would be punished or rejected. This led me to be very scrupulous and to be very harsh on my mistakes. I tried hard to do all that was asked of me. I tried to be a good and obedient child. I tried to do well at school. I even tried to go to Mass every week, but I did not understand the importance of it. Like most things, I did it only because I was told to. My image of God was that he was a hard taskmaster who demanded perfection and would not allow even the smallest of mistakes. I believed that if I had even one sin, that he would cast me into hell for all eternity, and that it would be my fault. This image came from the environment I grew up in. I grew tired of this God who was so demanding, who seemed so judgmental and unapproachable. And when it was time to make my confirmation, I wanted to refuse. My belief in God was sincerely small, but my family insisted, so I did. After that, I stopped going to Mass on Sundays because my peer group told me that I took it too seriously, and anyway, I wanted to stay in bed on Sunday mornings. Not long after, I stopped going to confession because I did not believe a man, a priest or non-priest, could really forgive my sins by just reciting a specific formula. Slowly and steadily, I began to absorb the ways of the world around me. My conscience became duller, and I began to accept things that I'd once seen as wrong, like abortion. I grew up distant from the Catholic Church and blamed it all on the corruption and scandals of this century and of the centuries before. I didn't struggle only with the morality of the Church, but began to question its most basic tenets, like the idea that Jesus was fully God and fully man. Interestingly, I never really doubted that God existed. My image of him was very messed up, but I believed that he was real. I also believed that the Shroud of Turin was the real burial cloth of Jesus, because when I weighted up the evidence, it seemed to point to an origin that could not be explained by science alone. I lived for some years in this dark place. I felt separate from God and even from myself. I tried to give a good life, but I realized that being good is very subjective. And during COVID restrictions, I began to see a side of humanity that I had never been exposed to before. Many people had strong opinions about the right thing to do. I didn't like the division or the behavior that I experienced from otherwise good and rational people. I started asking questions like, where is there evil in this world, and does God bring people into this world to test them, and in some cases to send them to an eternal doom? These questions might seem very dark and gloomy, but it was an important part of my journey, as it helped me to start using my reason and to ask the bigger questions about life and existence. It did not take me long to realize that it made sense that this good I was looking for could not be just an abstract idea or an ideology, but was in fact the same God that I'd been baptized for, so the Christian God. Things didn't change yet, but this was the beginning of a new journey. I had spent my life studying, especially history. It is my favorite subject and also my hobby. And I even studied history at university. However, after such a long time of studying and learning all this information, I realized that something important was missing from all this knowledge. And in late 2022, I did a project in which I had to share details about Capuchin friars. Unexpectedly, this led me to research about the Church and Christianity as a whole. As I did the research, I began to see God differently, but my anti-church and anti-clerical mindset would not allow me to investigate too deeply. I avoided attending any of their liturgies or prayers, even though I was curious. I did some research into the Gospels, which led me to read some historical books and documents, and this helped me to see that some ideas that I had about the Church were misguided. I did not really want to have to explore the Catholic Church too much, So I did some research into the Orthodox churches, hoping to ratify my newfound curiosity there. I had the opportunity to talk with a very nice Romanian Orthodox priest who gave me insightful advice which was very helpful in my faith journey. However, at the end, I decided I could never be really fully Orthodox, and I still hold a huge respect for the Orthodox Church, and that one day the Catholics and Orthodox, the two lungs of Christianity, will be at least in communion again, if not in union. In the meantime, my desire to learn about my faith began to grow even more. I was offered an opportunity to do an internship at the Benedictine Abbey of Praglia, near Padua, Italy. My role was to help the monks order their library, and I got to spend 3 weeks living with them. I really learned a lot, because during this time I also got to join the monks during their liturgical times of prayer, their silent meals, listening to their Torah, etc. The abbey was beautiful, but what I liked the most was the peace and the majesty the complex seemed to emanate, so much so that sometimes in my room I stopped reading or writing just to listen to the divine silence of the abbey. At the end of this internship, I understood that the important knowledge I had been missing in the previous years was the knowledge of God. After the experience at the Abbey, I had the desire to go back to Mass and to read the Bible. And in July 2024, I went to a confession for the first time in over a decade. Unfortunately, I did not have a great experience, and this actually set me back and made me doubt the reality of the sacraments. I doubt that a man could have the power to forgive sins. One night at the end of August, around 2 a.m., I was laying on my bed watching documentaries about Christianity when I clicked on a video called "Is Ireland Still Catholic?" At the end of the video, the journalist presented a Holy Family mission, something I had never heard of before. I checked the website, and a few days after, I sent my application. When I told the news to some of my family, they weren't the most supportive. They reminded me that I had got my degree in history very recently, and now it was time to start working. This was a very difficult time for me. It was harder to make the decision, but finally I decided to come to Ireland, and 48 hours later I was on a flight to Cork. The first week at HFM was really good. Everything was new, from the people to the environment. The start of the second week was the opposite. I felt the weight of my mistakes, decisions and wrongdoings on my shoulders. I knew that I needed to go to confession again, so I arranged to meet the priest. This confession was very difficult for me. I felt emotionally and spiritually exhausted. I was more honest than I had never ever been. Afterwards, I felt a huge relief. After that confession, I also had to go to take a long hot shower because I wanted to be as clean on the outside as I felt on the inside. One of the things that helped me to make my conversion was the sense of peace around the camera house, the example of the young people around me, their good mothers, and especially their sincere devotion to saints, prayers and places, something I lack, and I still struggle with despite the respect I recognize they deserve. One thing I really struggled with was believing that Jesus was really present in the Eucharist, because from childhood I grew to understand that the communion bread was just holy bread that represented the body of Christ. I did not understand that Catholics believe that Jesus was actually present in the form of bread. Despite my skepticism, I started to ask questions, and everybody was telling me that the host during Mass literally becomes the body of Christ. When the priest proclaims the word of Jesus, "This is my body," not a symbol, not a metaphor, but the real presence of Christ. I knew what they believed in. I knew that they believed it, but I was not sure if I did or could believe it, because I am an historian, and historians are like that. You either show them the proof, or they do not accept it as a fact. I wanted this to be so I prayed for weeks before the host, hoping to climb over the thin but tall wall that separated me from seeing the body of Christ. A part of me wanted to shake the host, shouting, "Show yourself, I know you are here, so show yourself." At the beginning of November, I had less than a second of glimpse of Jesus in the Eucharist. It left me a sensation of relief for half a minute later, like the end of a very nice melody which is about to conclude. Not long after that, we attended the Youth 2000 retreat in Cork. I went to confession that evening and returned to the place where there was adoration, where I looked towards the Blessed Sacrament in the monstrance. It was like God suddenly tore down the wall of doubt that I had. I understood and I knew that Jesus was and is there, and not only him, the entire Trinity was and is in the host, thus God was and is in the host. There are many things I still have to learn about God and about myself, but I am glad to be here at Holy Family Mission, where I can continue to grow in my faith. We study the Catechism every day. This helps me to know what the Church teaches and why we believe what we believe. I have learned that when I struggle with believing, I can ask God to help me, and he does, like when he helped me to go to confession or helped me to understand the Eucharist. There are still many things I struggle to believe, like the phrase God is love. I want to know what it means and how to love him as he deserves. I am delighted that my sister has come to visit me here at HFM after praying God to help her, and I'm happy to see her spiritual and social attitude making promising progress. I'm so thankful to all the staff at Holy Family Mission, to my fellow community members, and to the Bishop Fonsi for making this place so special. I'm grateful to all of you who are listening for your ongoing support and prayers. But most of all, I'm thankful to God for helping me to stay awake the night I first heard about Holy Family Mission. My image of myself has changed, my image of the Church has changed, and the image of God is still changing for the better. Thank you, and God bless you.